Hi, and welcome to Homo Ludens, the channel on history and board games. And I'm here today with two special people. First of all, Liz, my co-host for this series, Wargame Archaeology, that we do on both channels. So one episode is on Beyond Solitaire, one episode is on Homo Ludens. In Wargame Archaeology, we've been doing a few things. The first thing that we've been doing has been going through the issues of the General, Avalon Hills magazine that was started in the mid-60s. And we also started playing older war games. So the first one that we covered was D-Day, the 1965 edition, and we're planning on doing quite a few of those Avalon Hill classics. And we're going to expand as the time goes, but we're looking at it chronologically. And the idea of this first session that we're having with Mark is to also speak to players that were there at the time of those magazines. So, giving a bit of a more personal perspective on what was the hobby like, how did it evolve, and yeah, just get perspective from people who went through the whole process. And Mark, I don't know how it happened, but I know that a few people in my community are either in contact with you. I think Alistair is playing with you some games. I have other people in my community who are in contact with you, and it may just made sense that you were the first person for us to reach out to. And so you're here and you accepted the invitation, and we want to thank you for that. And I think that would be the first thing that we'd like to say. Thanks for taking the time to speak to us and having this discussion about, I would say, the history of war games.
Well, let me say thanks to you guys for having me. And I'm super happy to be here because I love talking about wargaming and the joy it brings. And yes, in Europe, I've even tried to do on my channel or Juro's Corner to reach out to Europe. But I know, yeah, Uwe over at Sound of Drums, I think Alec, I'm probably mispronouncing it.
Yeah.
But and then there's a few different European companies. But a little background. I'm Mark Ruggiero. I'm 58. I was born in Brockton, Massachusetts. Came to California in 1974 when I was 9 years old. My dad moved us out here for a job that he took. I've been gaming since I was 10 years old. And I love to hear your name of your show, Archaeology, because I think that gives images of this like a dig, right? Like, oh, what's this artifact? And it really is true. It's such a rich history, and I hopefully I can, give some a little bit of light, at least from my perspective, from 1975 on today. And I'll just really quick, but war game biography wise. My first game was Avalon Hill Tactics 2. I was 10 years old.
So you really started at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was what happened was I was into playing chess, Stratego, checkers, a bunch of different, Tank Battle for Milton Bradley, I think might have been out. Maybe that was a year or two later. And there was the ad in Boys Life magazine, which was this magazine for kids that my parents had subscribed to, and it was published actually by Monarch Publishing, who published for Avalon Hill. And there was an ad, and it said,
Oh, that's an interesting connection. Yeah.
yeah, and it said, command your own armies, command this. And I'm like, oh my God, this would be so great, because I'm out in the backyard, doing my board games, but then out in the backyard playing with my little green army man and, just doing the things I think that little boys did, rainy days, I'd build forts inside the house. And, we didn't have computers and all that stuff back then. But my point is like, I knew this toy store that had it. It was $5 and that was a fortune. So I had to save my allowances up for quite a while. And then I went and bought it. And then it was like, oh my God, this is like its own language,
A
right?
revelation. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like zones of control, odds. Like, I mean, now it's simple, right? But back then it was like this, not only was it a game I was excited about, but it's like this whole foreign language. Like, oh my God, because, most games, of course, roll your dice, move your guys, or compare it, but very different. And it took me about 6 months, I think, to figure out how to play it correctly. And I know we're going to talk more, but then for Christmas, my parents bought me this game called Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, or Rise and Decline of the Third Reich. And oh my God, that was like going from first grade to college. Like had fronts and fleets, and I don't know, it probably took me
Yeah,
a year.
that's quite a step up.
Who did
No,
you
go
play
ahead.
with at first?
So at first, honestly, I figured out a lot of it was solitaire at first, because I really didn't have anybody. And then my brother Ron, who I'm really close with, he's 5 years younger than me, so he was about maybe 6 years old by the time I talked him into kind of playing, you know.
Mm.
And I was a big brother, I'd bullied him a little bit, I'm sure, to get him to do it. But we laugh about it now. But I played him, and then I had I want to say it wasn't until about sixth grade, when I was about 12. How old are you in sixth grade? Yeah, about 12, I guess. And I've actually started to meet couple other kids that had games. They had like Alpha Omega, which was I remember this one kid, Randy, had Alpha Omega, which was a battle line game, which eventually, I think, when Avalon Hill bought Battle Line, they repackaged it and sold it. And then I had a friend of mine, Mike, that I used to do sleepovers on Friday nights, and we would play. And I got a great story about Squad Leader with that one.
We want to hear it.
We
now.
want to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my friend Mike, his family had a little more money than I did. So, we get to I would do sleepovers like almost every Friday, not every week, but usually Friday night, go over, spend the night at his house. We would play and do stuff on, Friday night and Saturday. So it's 1977. I show up, for a sleepover, and not even a clue what we were going to play that day or whatever. And he's like, Mark, I've got this brand new game, Squad Leader. It's so amazing. And I got to tell you, it was one of those games designed by, of course, John Hills, passed away now. Roger McGowan cover art. I love Roger and his cover art. But it was so amazing. It was so different. I mean, ranged machine gun fire and rolling to see if your squad's broke. It wasn't just this, oh, let's get 3-1, roll the die. And that first scenario, I just did a video for this on my channel, but that first scenario, the guards counterattack, somebody said it really well to me actually just the other day. Said, you want a game and it's something that grabs you. This game was so innovative at the time. I mean, it was just breakthrough, right? It for board gamers. Even the scenario cards had like little historical descriptions and it would have aftermath. And again, as I go to his house, and we must have played the guards counterattack 4 or 5 times that Saturday. And I don't think we played it right once, of course, but and it only had it used
typical wargaming. Yeah, they never play the games.
I never played anything right either. It's fine.
But what's really interesting is, so kind of a little perspective, I think. What's really interesting is, to me, about a lot of those old games, and there's a couple other breakthrough games I can talk about, but I think what's really interesting is it was such a joyful moment, and it was like just so much fun. And what's amazing is people look at things through rose-colored glasses, because honestly, right now we're in a golden age. Back then, I mean, it was new, it was exciting, but there was no internet, right? And and it was just amazing. And I say this totally tongue-in-cheek, how perfect all these old games were. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, today a game comes out and, sometimes gets immediately attacked. Right. Oh, this game's garbage. Oh, it's unplayable. I haven't even opened the damn box yet. Pardon. Like, it's like, give me a break. things weren't perfect. I mean, even squad leader had errata and whatever. But the thing is, what's key, and I'm Italian, so I talk with my hands a lot, is I think the place that wargaming holds for me, and it always has and always will, is that 12-year-old kid, that 10-year-old kid is still inside. He still wants to play, you know? That's the essence of gaming, whether it's a fantasy game, a war game, a Euro, like whatever. I don't Euro game because I'm an addict. Okay. Let's be really clear. If I did, and not that I won't play them, I'll play whatever, but I won't buy them only just because I know how I am. And I'm a total addict when it comes to gaming. There's just so much excitement and joy there. But yeah, that story, man, that squad leader to this day, when I met Roger McGowan back in 2004, and I consider him a friend now, but I was like the total fanboy. Like I got to have a beer with Roger McGowan. Okay. I might as well have been meeting, Angus Young or something from ECDC because, Roger McGowan, anyways, epitomized for me wargame art, cover art especially
at that time. The influence that he had on the hobby and what the boxes look like has been quite significative.
Yeah,
I want to come back to
yes.
something that you said that was really interesting regarding some of the drawbacks of being connected and online. So one of the positive things you say, well, we can play a lot more games. There are a lot more games. We're in a golden age. The very fact that we can record this show right now is something that would have been completely impossible in the 70s. Obviously,
right.
Like Liz is more close to the East Coast. You're on the West Coast. I'm in France. Like just the fact that we can meet each other and talk is just, sometimes when I think about it, I think it's mind blowing. But there is also the drawback of some negative aspects, and we might talk about more of them because I think there are also some of them in the wargaming community that existed back then, but I think have been became even worse because of online. But going specifically on the games, do you think the fact that there was no easy way to communicate on errata for players to exchange meant that when you get the box, players were more proactive in, well, if there is something that they don't understand, they figure it out. And it doesn't really matter that they play perfectly the game, as long as they hold the spirit of the rules and just focus on spending a good time and having a great experience. You feel like something like this got lost a bit in the process?
Yeah, I do. I mean, and remember, this is coming from a perspective for me of, honestly, from when I was probably 12 all the way through, high school and stuff, 18, 19. I think we were able to just kind of look past the imperfections. And you did have tools like the general that would bring you the errata or the fixes and things. I think part of the modern age, it's great because you have a speedier way to communicate and like you said, things like this. But I think the negatives are accentuated. And I'll tell you this, it wasn't perfect because I can remember being 15 years old and wanting to play Avalon Hill Guns of August. And I had adults that would not play with me because I was 15 years old. They excluded me. And I never exclude anybody. Now, I think some of that in some ways carries forward to the internet age, honestly, in some ways, whether people realize it or not, they exclude people, and, but that's also inclusive. I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's like, so there's a bigger pool.
Yeah.
So you, therefore, you do experience some like, we're going to exclude you. But I think what I don't like the most about our current age and social media, I think, so what I don't like the fact that like Liz could say, this is the greatest game ever. I'm having such a great time playing it. And somebody's always got to come along and just basically, I'll be polite, rain on your parade. And it's not even constructive criticism. Oh, that's the worst game ever. Oh my gosh. Well, like it's like, give me a break. You know what? Like one person's treasure, whatever. it's all got to be about the journey, like. And then these people that come out with like a game gets released and I haven't even opened the box yet, and they're like, "Oh, it's broken." Like, okay, genius, like, thank you to the creators. Boy, I know I'm jumping all over, but I'm just really passionate about, like,
Yeah.
you know,
I think it's so. I
what's the
think there is.
positive? I have some
Yeah.
positives to say
There
too.
is two things. I think I agree with you on the fact that a lot of people might be very ungrateful. And Liz, you've been designing your first game now with David, and you're working on a new one. And I guess now you have a very intimate understanding of how hard it is to make a game, and also how little money you make of it. Every historical game is a passion project, so it means that you have a group of people who are paid like per hour, almost nothing, putting a lot of love, a lot of effort, a lot of passion into something, and
Mhm.
constructive criticism is heartbreaking because it's like, well, you could be a bit more thankful for what I've done here,
Yeah,
and maybe you can. But that being said, I think on the other side, you've got a lot of people who are pushing back on constructive criticism, because there are also another part of the community that gets really upset when you look at a game and say, okay, I engage with it, I understand what it does and how it works, but at the same time, when you start to explain why you think a game has issues, either in the way it depicts history or in the way it uses its mechanics and everything, and you try to have a structured argument, like people get also very upset on the other side, saying, well, don't ruin our fun, because I think there is two sides to this, and I think both are wrong. But I think it's also important to recognize that criticism is useful for the hobby to move forward.
Constructive criticism. Yes,
Constructive,
absolutely.
and we also have a movement of people pushing back on this, and I think, and often probably they are the same people who are also being very dismissive of games without thinking about it. I think so, but then again, that's something.
Opinionated.
Yes, what do you
I'll
think,
say
Liz?
so. As a designer and a reviewer, I guess I'll probably design more and review less in months and years to come. But first of all, no, you don't make any money on this. David and I have been working on Nightwish stuff for like 2 years, and I haven't seen any money from it yet. But that is okay, because I'm very happy that Nightwishes is there. Right? It's been great. When it comes to, I'm also a reviewer. Like, I'm perfectly prepared for people to love Night Witches, hate Night Witches, have all kinds of opinions about Night Witches, and I kind of feel like, in a way, like, I love to review games because I like to talk about them. I think that sometimes, even when I'm being critical of a game, I still want to have the conversation. I still wanted to engage that game. I still spent my time on the game, and I kind of feel like that's a really important part of it, right?
Hmm.
It's not like I just threw something in the trash. I also sort of feel like with my own games starting to make their way out in the world, and I don't know, maybe Fred, you feel this way too, or like Mark, you as somebody who's been part of the commentary for a long time. I kind of feel like people's opinions about my games on the line are kind of their business, if that makes sense. I think it's my job to make the best game that I can make, and for David and me to be the best team that we can be, and for us to, like, bring Night Witches and our next game out into the world is like the what we really want it to be.
Yeah.
But then how people respond to it's kind of up to them. I hope that
Yeah.
people give it a fair shot, But
But
I'm aware of my lack of control over that.
but to Mark's points, and I mean, I've experienced this firsthand. Like, some people are just going to be, they actively want to make the hobby unwelcoming, and want to make conflicts out of everything. I mean, all my games are review bombed because of my political stance. I think it was the same for Jack Rady in the
Yes,
80s.
you're in good
Yeah,
company. Yep, Jack's
yeah,
great. I love Jack.
yeah. And I think it's the same problem. Like, you always have those people, and I think it's important to identify them and push back when needed. But they've always been here, as we've seen reading the general. Like, we've seen those people that were already there and they were already pushed back. And I think it's important that our generation also pushes back, like the generations before us.
Your generation's the future, brother and sister.
Well,
Like,
we're more the present now. We're a bit old.
well, yeah,
But
but what I'm saying is, once us old people, well, anyways, yeah, that's once our old people get out of the way. I wanted to say, like, just so you understand too, or people understand my perspective. Everything I do around gaming, my unionism, whatever, it's geared to recruitment. I want to spread the love. When I see a new creation, I used to be, the first guy to buy it, the first guy to, because I want creators to be successful, right? But I think that what was said a minute ago too is constructive criticism is fine. I'm not like, when I talk about negativity, I'm not talking about that. Now, the positivity, and I will say this, like, I'm going to just give a plug real quick. So Uwe over at Sound and Drum Games did ILAO. He dedicated the game to me. And if you read the dedication, he gives me all kinds of credit for even having his company, which I don't feel I deserve. But what I did do is early on, I encouraged him. I looked at his rules. No, I didn't proofread, but I gave him a lot of feedback. So I was involved in that way with that game, just like I've play tested a few games in the past. The reason I'm giving Uwe, and then I think Alec I think that's his name, is a French company he's doing a 7 Years War. Didn't help at all with his games, but he's just been very kind, and he's sending me a copy. But I guess what I wanted to say, so I'm not a creator, but I want to celebrate the creators, because I always say without the creators, we don't have a hobby. We don't. And then to your point, like the exclusionists, like I probably know who you're talking about, at least a couple of them, But the positive side of the internet and things is greater connectivity, greater chance for opponents, greater chance to have discussions like this, and also a greater way to spread joy and happiness and love and the positives of the hobby, because we can I ignored the negatives, like Liz, like you said, you can't control it. And isn't Nightwitch the name of a band too?
There is a song by Sabaton. If there's name of band, hang on, let me check this.
No, it's okay. I'm
it.
just a huge metalhead, and I could have swore there was a name. Like, talk about Europe just for a second. I won't, like Sabaton, I think is great, but some of the best heavy metal ever has come out of Europe. Iron Maiden, Venom, Black Sabbath.
So I think the band might be Night Bitch, but I'm not sure.
Oh, it might be. No, but anyways,
that would be a very different game, Liz. But
yes, that would be a game about me. No,
but anyways, it's a different show. I'll look something up later and I'll message you. But anyway,
Mark,
sorry.
I actually have a question. So you talked about, kind of feeling excluded earlier, like when you were younger and older people wouldn't play with you. But it sounded like you found people to play with, like you found peers. But I also want to know, like, I guess, when did you end up getting your first Avalon Hill General? And when did you feel like the hobby for you kind of moved from, I have a few friends that I've managed to get to play games with me, to, oh, whoa, this is something wider. There's a community thing going on. And, I want to know how that happened for you. Because if we're thinking about like how to create it, right? Like, how did it work for you? And then could it be done now?
Why I want to say, yeah, it can be done. There's lots of great ways to do it now. I got lots of thoughts on that, and in practice too. So I subscribed to the General. I think I was a sophomore or junior in high school. So I was probably like 15, 16, somewhere in there. And I was excited. I forgot how much it cost, but I remember mailing in my subscription and got that first issue, and created a lot of topic of discussion amongst my friends that played. As far as, maybe repeat part of the question, I think part of your question was what made me feel more tied into the hobby. Is that what you were asking?
And like, when did you go from just, I play with a couple friends down the street, to, oh, there's an entire hobby of wargamers out here and I'm part of it?
Well, that's interesting, because it's a great question, because I think, getting the General was part of it. I don't think I ever actually even put like an opponent's wanted ad in until after I was already in the military, which would have been, I was 18 or 19. But I think it was kind of like, I realized when I got the General, I realized, oh my gosh, there's this whole world out there. There's letters to the editor and all these, kind of interesting strategy articles and stuff. And I say interesting, so I'll say this as a gamer, even today, the general in some ways was a great revelation because wow, there's this whole world out there. But also to me in some ways it was a disappointment because it had a lot of articles that broke down things into percentages and numbers and right and I mean don't get me wrong, there was more other type articles in there too that were more on like general strategy and some of the history and stuff. But man, that number stuff really like, ugh, like I've never been the guy that was like, I need one more factor to get that perfect 3-1 or never. And that's probably why I don't win very often because I don't tend to analyze my games. I play them for magic. And I'll give you like an example, like Avalon Hill Russian Campaign. I'd opened the map up for Russian Campaign, which was a Jedco game made in Australia, which Avalon Hill bought out and re-released. I used to sit there and I wouldn't be looking at like, oh, what's the best way to do this attack or defend this line? I'd be like, in my mind, I'm like, how am I going to defend the Crimea Peninsula from the evil Germans? Or how am I going to attack with Germany and knock Russia out of the war? It was like this whole narrative in my head from books I was reading to Paper Time Machine. And I stole that. That's actually in either S&T or one of the generals, somebody. But, gaming, they're paper time machines too. But
I think it's a really interesting point because I feel like this divide in terms of perception towards the game or the kind of experience that you're looking for has always existed when you read the old the general. And I think the Paper Time Machine is early in strategy and tactics. But you have what you said about the experience playing squad leader, like it clearly comes through that the fun around playing squad leader was spending that moment with that person, telling stories together using those counters, like it just as a medium to actually collect, like title, almost like role playing, telling a story together. Whereas I feel like there is a branch of the hobby that I don't necessarily understand. That is just what I call playing competitive Sudoku, where they are actually just optimizing. I'm gonna go on that hex because then I'm gonna have a zone of control here, and then I'm gonna go on that hex. Then I will have the 3-to-1 ratio that I exactly need. And they keep talking about simulation and how things are simulation, and you're like, I don't think that in warfare, like generals, we're like, oh, I'm going to move here, and I'm going to have an exact 3-to-1 ratio. I don't think that that's the way it works. So I don't know what you're simulating here, but it's just odd. And there is this obsession with mathematics, and it's like mathematics are important for game design. Don't get me wrong, but it's a means to an end. And I feel, yeah.
I actually find this less surprising. And Mark, I'd be really interested in your comments on this. I've always sort of perceived wargaming as mathy because one of the other kind of concurrent hobbies used to be like model trains. And there's so many engineers and like sort of early computer science nerds and like, people who are already sort of numbers oriented, I think, as early fans of these games.
I think that's a perception. I think it's valid, right? It's definitely a hobby of the overeducated in the sense of, like, I'll tell you, I'm an exception. I mean, I've been to college, but I don't have a degree. And I know that virtually, I think, maybe except for one other person, everybody I've ever gamed with has some kind of university education, right? I think it is mathy, but I think what gets lost but it is also the role playing aspect is very active in a lot of gamers. And I will say this, I think that, people need to enjoy their journey, whatever it is. But there's definitely, like I know when I'm playing a game, I'm not, and I think there's a good element of that is not trying to figure out the exact best, because, you said it right about no real life general plans every, we need one more factor to get a 3-to-1, right? But I know when I play, I'm more in my head role playing, whether I'm Napoleon or Churchill or I'm a squad leader or whatever, and I think there are actually a lot of gamers do that. Now I like to say we all want to do well. Everybody likes to do well. There is some competitiveness there, which is okay. But it's not, what I say is this, you can, and I've met guys like this, and actually I have a pretty big circle of players, and not one of them is like that, in the sense of, I've met people like, I'm not a man, or I'm not a person unless I win. And that's a sad reflection on them. I mean, they may enjoy that. And if that's what they enjoy, I'm sincere when I say enjoy your journey, but I'm not going to play you because, I want to do well and I like to understand how a game works and this and that. But winning's not, nobody likes to lose all the time. Okay. But winning's not, it's not a proof of who I am by any stretch. And I've met people where I think that's their being, that's their in their psychology, like it's a really interesting question because this may be tracking a little bit off, but the one thing that's true about life is everybody has trauma in their life somehow, and how they deal with it is very different. For me, some of the trauma I've had in my life, love of gaming has been the escapism, right? I'm sure for some people their reaction might be just that, who knows what their trauma was, but it was like, I gotta win or I'm not, and like I say, like, I gotta tell you, I've run war games at a few different conventions. There's a regional one, Pacificon, and we get about 12 to 1,500 gamers, about 200 war gamers. It's role playing, miniatures, all that. And I've run the war games there for going on over 25 years now. We have events called tournaments, but they're not really tournaments. People just want to play. And I mean that, like, they're that's been my experience. And and I don't know if I'm really answering your question, because I really am, by the way, trying to listen and then think about, but I just have so many like things going through my head with all of this, because I have such a passion for it. But I think imagination, let me give you a real life example really quick. My boys, when my oldest son was younger, he's 38 now, he would play war games with me. Now he will once in a while, but he's mainly into Warhammer and which is fine. Those are wonderful games. And I asked him one time, I said, what's the difference? Because, Warhammer, it's its own different setting and everything. But if you look at it, it's like, especially the fantasy stuff is like magic is artillery.
Yeah.
And you got mass troops, but it's the imagination part. And I think maybe what you said, I guess I should ask him. It might be true for him. Maybe for him, it turned into a mathematical thing. Let's be real, like math's important, but it's not a lot of fun, right?
I will say, Mark, I'm definitely on your side on this. For me, games are fun. I love games because I like to, I think I've particularly gravitated towards historical games because I love thinking about what is the game saying about history? Like, how am I thinking about history while playing this? Like, I want that kind of experience where I'm like really into something with somebody. I will say I lose my spark for a game, not like the game itself, but like playing it with someone, when winning or losing becomes about more than just the game and like being a little bit competitive and having a good time. I don't need the desire to win to mean more than just winning one game. And also, like, I don't like to let trying to win get in the way of having a good time, if that makes sense.
That's right. No, it totally makes sense. Because what's the biggest fun of gaming too is the socializing. I'll tell you this. So Dean Essig, who sadly, recently passed away, and if you don't know who Dean was he was the owner of the Gamers, who got bought out by MMP, but he's designed like the Operational Combat series, Civil War Brigade series. But his perspective on, he would put victory conditions in his games. But one of the things that he said, I was just talking to a buddy of mine last night about this, was, he would say, who's winning. Right. And it's like, but that's, so, he almost hated having to come up with, and if you don't know who Dean Essig is, you should
check him out because he had a quite big influence on the hobby. And Liz was saying something that I thought was interesting because you've been talking about games as escapism, having a great time, and Liz was talking about thinking about history and using it as a different way to interact with history beyond books or films or reading, I don't know, academic articles or anything. Was it also a way for you to approach history over your life? Like, was it a way for you to explore topics that you were not really aware of, or think about topics in a different light? How did it shape the way you see history?
So actually, yeah, I'm the type of gamer that I'll get a game because it looks interesting and I don't know anything about the history, so I'll go buy a book or watch a documentary on it or something and then explore it. And then, like everything I do in my life, I'm an addict, so I go nuts and buy 10 books. But so, yeah, I mean, the answer is yeah, no, it's been a great gateway to explore military history even more. And in some general history, and when I say that, like it's still related, but like if I was playing the old Avalon Hill Conquistador, so it made me want to read up on, the Aztecs and the horrible things that the colonizers did. The American Indian, the American Indian, the Plains Wars, or the exploring questions like why did Hitler declare war on America? The American Civil
Mm.
War, even the English Civil War a little bit. I don't know much
Yeah.
about it, but I've played a couple games, Musket and Pike, and so it's made me want to like learn more about that. Yeah, and yeah, it's opened up. So yeah, I use where some people read a history book or something and then want to get a game on it. I tend to be the opposite. Now, obviously, I'm very, whether it's because of my age or when I grew up, very World War II, World War One centric, American Civil War. Um, but I think it's all, yeah. I've definitely used games to want to that make me want to dig deeper into the history. Like I'm just now starting to get a couple of books. I haven't read anything on it, but like the 7 Years' War and things like that.
I kind of wanted to know, since we've got you here, we can get your perspective. You say that we're in a golden age now. What do you mean by that, and what changes in the hobby have gotten us there?
I think, okay, so I think one, it's for me the most obvious. You have such a wide variety of different games and game companies and subject matter. You got everything from the little, 75 pieces and an 11 by 17 hexagonal map that you can play in 30 minutes, all the way up to my preference, big, huge, complicated games. And then almost any subject that you can think of. And if you have rules questions, most designers are available in some way or another online. You have the humongous opportunities to attend conventions or play online via Vassal, or I don't think for war games necessarily it's ideal, but tabletop simulator. I myself like have a Zoom account and I don't use Vassal very often, but I have Discord and a Zoom account. And so the few times I do Vassal, I always play it live, right? Because a big part for me is talking and I love to talk. So, yeah, I'm Italian. So I keep saying that, but I'm proud of that. My grandfather from Naples and the other one was from Sicily, but
Oh, hey, that's
um,
my
sorry, but
boyfriend's
yeah,
family is
go ahead.
also from Naples, so.
Yeah, that's where my last name came from. But I'm sorry, go ahead. I don't know if I answered your question, but I think that's a big part of it is, it's just my gosh, like, you go back 35 years and, yeah, you had SPI and, but just in the amount of different approaches, like how many games are out there on World War II, just as an example? You got World in Flames, you got GMT's World at War. You got GMT's Supreme Commander, Unconditional Surrender, Compass Games. I could go on and on. They're all about World War II, and they're all about the same scale, but they all handle like totally differently. Like you can't even compare them really side by side. It's like apples and oranges. So it's like a buffet
Yeah.
of choices.
Just one quick follow-on question. Since you mentioned how awesome it is in this time of ours that you can kind of have a lot of access and talk to designers, what designer have you gotten to talk to over the years who was the most exciting for you to meet?
Game designers that I got to say, just because over the years and a long history, Dean Essig, probably. Just because I got to interact with him on many different levels ever since the 80s. I think, and he's going to be sadly missed. I mean, whether you like his games or not, he was very innovative and, really done some amazing things, I think, with games. More recently, just because of my involvement, was, when Uwe over at Sound of Drums designed ILAO. I did get to have a lot of interaction with him, and and he's much newer, and but it's just very. So those are two. My favorite designers are probably Dean Essig, Ray Bima. I'm drawing a blank. Vance von Boris, and I love Mark Herman. I mean, come on, I've never got to meet him personally, but Mark Herman's very innovative. There's a lot of
We can
sorry.
organize that, Mark, if you want. If there is a game that you want Mark to teach you, just let me know. I have him on speed dial, and he will always come on the show. So if there is a game that you wanna try, maybe an old one could be fun, like French 44 or something like this.
No,
Just
actually, I just bought or ordered the signature edition for that one,
oh yeah, I have the
and
old one. Yeah, we
but
can figure it
still,
out.
yeah, no, oh my God, Mark
Okay,
Herman. But anyways, yes, yeah,
noted. So I'll write it down in a corner of my head, and I'll reach out to Mark to see if he would be available to have a teach and play of Friends 44. That could be
right.
really fun. You were talking about Dean Essig and your relationship with him, like he's become a friend and you've interacted with him quite a lot. You talked about Uwe at Sound of Drums. And it's interesting because you've been in the hobby for more than 50 years now. You've been heavily involved in it in the community. Did at any point you felt the need to actually make your own game or have a bit more of a direct, like trying to involve yourself directly in actually game design, game development, or you thought that it wasn't for you, and why was it?
Well, it is easy, I think, to answer for me. As far as design, absolutely not. No, no desire. I don't even really tweak the games I have. Like some people house rule certain things. I'd like to just play a game and I want to know, what did the designer intend, right? Now, I will say I have play tested a few games. Well, and one that really stands out, like Decision Game Storm of Steel, I had a lot of involvement in that. Real early on, I was involved in play testing. What's called With Blitz. It was turned into an area movement game for World in Flames, but no, honestly, raising kids, and I've been married, 37 years almost. My wife's going to kill me, 37 years. I've never wanted to design a game ever. So, and it's just, I'm not that creative.
You say that, but in a way, when you talk about the way you play games, it feels like you're creating a lot while you're playing. You're creating stories, you're creating
Yeah.
narratives. It's all
Okay.
happening
Yeah.
in the theater of the mind. Like it's really like so. I'm not sure that you're not creative, Mark. I'm not sure
Yeah.
that's fair, but
But I will acknowledge it. No, I do. Every time I play a game in my head, I write a story. If I'm playing La Bataille or something, and I'm doing a cavalry charge, man, in my head, I'm leading that cavalry charge. It's an experience. It just really is. And thank goodness it's cardboard and it's dice. Because, in the end, what we're simulating is horrible, right? It's so, I got to tell you, like, one thing, and I'll share this. So I watch a lot of documentaries and this and that. And there's in the Normandy stuff, especially with the anniversary coming up, almost every documentary, there's a scene where there's three American soldiers running up the beach. And one of them drops like a sack of potatoes. And you know what? You're happy. Like, I'm sure, like he was killed or whatever, And I always cry. I actually been asked, like, why do you get emotional when you see stuff like that? And I think about it, and I think about, I guess I just think about the loss, and I think about, people say, oh, these guys were so brave, and they were scared shitless, and
Mm.
they did something that, thankfully, cardboard, we get to explore the interesting what ifs, and the history of it is what makes it exciting, right? I don't know why I shared that. I guess because I'm an open book, but I just think it's like,
I think it's interesting because, like, I think it says something. Like, I've sometimes also have those moments of clarity that I tell, like, I call them that way, where I'm playing a game and I'm enjoying and everything. I'm enjoying myself. I feel like a bit of dissociation. I'm looking at it. I'm saying, what am I doing right now? What does sending that counter or sending that block here to a certain depth
man,
to delay something to happen? What does it mean? What is the implication? And is it normal that I'm having fun doing it? I think it's interesting to have those moments of reflection. Remember what we're doing, why we're doing it.
yeah, but I
I
think
think it's healthy to cry when you see someone die, like fighting the Nazis. Like it's yeah.
right. No, and let me play the devil's advocate or the flip side, because I get my group accuses me, which really isn't true. I play the allies a lot. They're the quote unquote good guys, but I do like playing the underdog, and the underdog usually in stuff is playing, the Axis or the Central Powers or the Confederacy. And trust me, you know, I'm not like, I'm okay with let's put the statues away and all that bullshit, but I'm okay with that. I don't think we should forget our history at all, because we will repeat it if we do.
Mm.
And but I have fun whether I'm playing Germans or Americans or the French or the Russians or I will say this, like in today's world, I've seen guys get so defensive, and the younger gamers out there, and I'll tell you this, it ain't just the younger gamers, and I salute them. I have a buddy of mine that will not play GMT's Labyrinth with me because it has Islam, the Muslim or
Yeah.
whatever, the terrorist,
Radical
right?
Islam. Yeah.
And he just won't play it. And I'm like, oh, I'll play. I'll even be the Muslims. I want a New York City. It's a game. It's an exploration
But I think
of,
that's,
you know,
yeah. I think that's an important point. Like, I do enjoy playing the quote unquote bad guys, a lot of those games, because in a way it's also like it's a safe way to actually try to understand something that is very foreign.
right.
I don't understand radical Islam. Like, I don't
Right.
understand it deeply, but I want to understand their motivations, their inner workings, and why they would make certain decisions. And I feel like gaming is a great way to do this, because you're, in a
No, it
way, in
is.
an abstract way, walking into their shoes, and you're like, I understand why you would do something like this,
It,
for example. Yeah.
I think, no, yeah, no, I think that's right. Now, I want to share this. So there again, I don't know, what you'll do with it. It's for you guys, but this is really true. Like I won't say a name because it doesn't really matter. I was having a discussion with somebody from Germany, and we got into, it was really interesting discussion in the sense we talked about games and all kinds of different things, beer, food, and all that. But one thing we got into in a positive, constructive way was nationalism. And we talked about who would we have been if we were of age in World War II. Reality is, I would have probably been a GI or something, and going over there to kill the damn dirty Nazis. And the reality is, he probably would have been in the Wehrmacht for what, and that's just reality. And I don't really know where that has a place in this discussion, but I just wanted to share it because I think it's real. But I think
Yeah.
that the gaming aspect of different things is, it's just a great exploration of all things. Like people always ask me, well, Mark, like, why is history so interesting to you? And I'll tell you, it's not the dates and the numbers but it's the stories. It's these people lived and they had an experience, regardless of where they were, and what made them tick and what made them do what they did. You think back to the Civil War. So I was at Gettysburg back in 20 some odd years ago now, but I was standing at the angle. which was the height of Pickett's charge on the Union line. And I think I got lost in my thoughts for at least an hour. And I'm looking out across this field, and I'm like, Pickett's guys are freaking nuts charging that. Like, what the hell were they thinking? But reality is, they lived in a time when they really believed that an individual could make all the difference in the world. Now, were they brave? Were they stupid? I really think, they thought they could win if they did that. They followed their leaders, but it was very moving to stand there and just look out across. And then and the whole time I'm just imagining what's going through these guys' heads, and oh my God, the cannon fire from the Union lines. But gaming is a way to experience that on a map and explore the people and the places and the times.
I have a question. I'm always just sort of interested in how other people respond, to games. So you mentioned that you feel emotional when, for example, watching film and somebody gets shot.
Yeah.
And I also get in my feelings, right, when I'm looking at, historical material. And I think that's actually good and like a good part of engaging. Can you reach that sort of peak of emotion and sympathy when you're playing a game?
So that's an interesting question, because I got to say, and they say the most honest answer is the first one. So I would say no. And like, it is interesting because when I'm playing a game, I'm focusing on, I think, like, what's my strategy and what do I know about this battle, but not, I don't know. I can't really say like I have the same emotions as if I'm watching a documentary. And I think that's because it's so visual, but then even like reading a book. But no, the game wise, I think then because I'm more focused on what am I enjoying about this experience? What strategy do I want to try? It's almost like whether I'm playing like a man to man combat or all the way up to where I'm playing some big strategic game. It's almost like it's more of a bird's eye view, if that makes sense, looking at it directly, And I really think like even when I'm watching something like directly, like I mentioned, the emotion is more based around like what is going, like these guys going through their heads, and how brave would that be? Would I have the courage to do that? Jump out of a damn landing craft with machine gun bullets flying around and it's crazy. But anyways, yeah. But yeah, so I think, yeah, my honest answer to that is no. When I'm playing, I have an emotional tie-in the sense that I'm happy that I'm playing and I'm socializing with whoever my opponent or opponents are, and we're exploring and exercising this thing they call a brain. Right.
But it's interesting. I don't want to go on a tangent, but just what you say around maybe the distance that you feel when you play a game. And I feel it's also a lot of that is due to scale and who we are role playing when we're playing those games. At the best, we're going to play a squad leader. Most probably, we're going to play a general. Sometimes we play even a higher up. And we're really far away from battle. And it reminds me this John Keegan book that was released in the late 70s, The Face of Battle, which was probably one of the first times that a military historian looked at warfare from the perspective of a soldier on the ground, what it meant for them, like what was fighting, what were they seeing, like how did they feel, like the weight of the thing that they were holding on them, the fact that with their helmets on, they could see just like very narrow vision, that they were tired because it was. And I think it's something that sometimes we don't necessarily have in historical war games. I feel like we haven't done that leap that military history has done with Face of Battle from John Keegan. Maybe we need our Keegan moment in wargaming and have something that maybe is more visceral. So maybe something to think about. But that being said, I thought it could be fun to finish with something that's going to be really hard for you to respond right now, because usually it's something that people need to bear. But I would like you to talk about your top 5 games of the moment, the 5 games that you're enjoying the most right now. And Liz and I will react, shame you if we don't agree, or cheer if we
okay. Yeah. So boy, top 5 games. But yeah, you're right. Right now in the moment, I'm going to say in the moment, Number one, absolutely.
No. Start with number 5, Mark. That's
Oh,
the
number
rule of the
5.
internet.
Okay.
Yeah, we go.
Darn
Yeah,
it.
the
Okay.
drama.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Oh, okay. So the
It
build
needs
up.
to
See,
escalate.
you gotta. See, I'm so enthusiastic. I just want to. I guess I'll put it number 5, just because I recently wrapped up playing it. GMT Games Unconditional Surrender, which is a strategic European game, World War II,
Yeah.
designed by Sal Vasta. Do you want me to say why, or you just want me to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to know.
Explain why.
So I think that, and this is totally based on what I've been playing recently, okay? But it's very innovative. It's an army level game. Everything in it has 10 movement points, except for leg armies, or 8 movement points. And you use your movement points for everything. So you activate an army. Not only is it used for movement, but you also attack with it while you're moving, and those cost movement points. It integrates a lot of really cool things in event chits, which handles your politics and a bunch of other things, and it abstracts the air and naval stuff, so you're able to just focus on the land combat. Has a rudimentary, I say rudimentary because you're not building like individual aircraft and stuff, but has a production system. It has a pretty simple strategic warfare, but it's super playable. And I just did a bunch of videos on it on my channel. So, but yeah, it's
So that's number 5.
number 5.
Good.
Number 4, just because it's a longtime favorite, I just love Advanced Squad Leader. Advanced Squad Leader, some people say is a lifestyle. I think it's a wonderful game. It's a great John Wayne movie with lots of action, where if you happen to use historical tactics, it tends to work, but it has a super wide variety of situations and covers just about everything you can think of at World War II at the squad level. Number 3, just because it's probably what's going to get played next on my table, just more as a retro jump back in time, is the original Squad Leader. And really, it's just at number 3 just because I dug out my copy and was looking at it and said, well, you play ASL, but let's jump back in time. And, and I had enough people comment on a trip down memory lane that I did that, okay, I'm going to do at least a couple scenarios of it just to go over the rules. And
actually, I have a question about this, Mark. So I've never played ASL. It's a big gap in my gaming knowledge. I know I should at least try it. I've always feel like I don't like. I just don't like the idea of it. For a lot
get
of
a starter
situations.
kit. It's like the
But
kit.
yeah, actually, a friend of mine gave me the 3 first starter kits, and I promised him that I would actually get started and give the game a fair shot.
Give it
But
a
I would
shot.
say, do you think that Squad Leader is a good way to start, or I should go with ASL starter kit?
So that's easy for me to answer. I would say if you want to do Advanced Squad Leader, it's a well-supported game. It's, there's a lot of people still play Squad Leader, but no, jump in, do the starter kit 1. It's a good way to see if you think you'll like it. But yeah, no, Squad Leader to ASL is not at all a good transition. ASL came about because with all the expansions they did, by the time GI Anvil of Victory came out, the game was a mess. It really was. And it needed, some people would disagree with that, but it needed ASL. And, but yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend, no. So that's easy for me to answer.
So number 2.
Number 2. Oh boy. Let me think about this just for a second.
I hope you remember your number 1 when we get there.
I did. No, I won't forget number 1. Number 1's easy right now. I gotta say, number 2 for me has got to be, I gotta say, is the La Bataille games from
I was wondering if we were going to talk about it.
Yeah. Just because I've been playing them off and on for a lot now, and I just really enjoy the grand sweep of the battles, and I think at that battalion scale, because that's what it is, battalion and regiment, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy the command structure, and it gets criticized because you gotta, gee, what rules do I want to play with and stuff. But I think it kind of fits that narrative. If you want to play and experience something, you pick a rule set and you play. I don't think it's the game you pick if you're that guy that has to win. And then number one,
Ooh,
been
drum roll.
playing, yes, drum roll. And I've been playing this in its different iterations since 1993 when it first came out. But right now I'm on my second 4-player game of Axis Empires Ultimate Edition from Decision Games.
Hardcore. Yeah.
And well, you say hardcore, but you know what? It's super playable. It's just amazing the narrative that it tells. It's a different game every single time you'll play it. It's playable. It's amazing. I've been in love with that game series ever since it started in 1993, and I say it succeeded in spite of itself because it probably had one of the worst rule books ever written when it first came out. Literally, it was so bad. But I remember the year it came out at the convention that I was at, that it came out at, spontaneously, there were 3 or 4 games of it broke out. And right away, it was very innovative because it's not card driven, but it's card assisted. Like that's how your production's done. And you got to plan ahead. You're committing ahead of time what you're going to be doing. And my friend Irwin put it the best. In some ways, it's like a computer game because you make decisions, but with the die rolls and stuff, you put the input, and here comes the output. You know, but you get to focus on the land combat. And the newer edition introduces a whole separate game to generate scenarios, and it
Mm.
has a detailed naval and air system if you want to add it, which I do eventually.
Because it looks like quite a beast, like 60 hours. I'm like, yeah, it looks.
Well, right. No doubt. But, I'll give you an example. The 4 of us, we get together, not every Sunday, because a lot of it's dependent on me. But when we do get together, we get through about a year every time we get together. And that's with 2 of the players being brand new. Never have
Yeah,
played
so
it
it
before.
it moves
So,
pretty fast. Yeah.
yeah, I can, as long as you're not the guy that wants to sit there and
I
I
do
do
want to
want to
ask
end.
one more question after you finish your
Yeah.
point, though. So if
I
I
can keep
don't
going, but yeah, go ahead.
actually, well, one thing I thought was so cool about your list is I feel like you chose games that you're bringing back to the table now, but also that you have these long relationships with over the course of decades, in
Yeah.
some cases. I feel like we live in a world that's very cult of the new in terms of how we engage with games that are coming out. We've always got new options. A lot of people playing new things. You unbox it, say it's broken, as we talked about earlier, right? What do you think is the right balance between games that you're really engaging with again and again over time and then new stuff? Because I feel like you like both.
So I think that if you look, the old stuff that I go back to had something very innovative about it, something different that made it really stand out. They weren't like just the run of the mill, oh, let's get a 3-to-1 and you know, but like Krieg's a great example. Honorable mention that I didn't, but it was like old Avalon Hill Battle of the Bulge. That's a game that the 81 edition I've gone back to, but it was the first game in 65 to introduce engaged and contact results. So I say honorable mention, but but I'll tend to go back. The older games I'll go back to had something innovative and different about them. The quote unquote classics. Don't get me wrong. If you're the person, hey Mark, let's play Africa Core. Okay, but even that had something innovative in it. It had supply units and overruns.
And I would say the classic 3-to-1 ratio that you want to have in a hex encounter at some point was innovative. Like it's like
No, that's true. I mean, no, but that's true. So I guess when I used the term innovative, it was because you're right. It all was innovative. I mean, let's be real. In 1959 or whatever it was when Charles Roberts came out with Tactics, right? At least that's kind of acknowledged here in the States. Probably the first war game. Commercially, it was Gettysburg, I think. But I mean, as far as like kind of breaking that mold of the quote unquote classics, maybe. But you're right. Actually, the whole hobby is innovative when you put it that way.
Mm.
That's really true.
Yeah.
Um,
And the reason why I'm saying this is that I feel like there is a lot of people who want to be very conservative about what wargamings should be and what they are. And I think it's missing the point. Like coming up with the idea for wargaming, even classic Hex Encounter originally was crazy innovative. And I think that wargaming has had an influence on general board gaming a lot more than we realize or admit. Like the way a lot of games that are not war games use cards is very reminiscent of CDGs. I think we had as a community had an influence, a positive influence on designs, on innovation, on the way to depict different things. I think the coin series is also super innovative in the way you can actually
can I ask you a
interact.
question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like I think I heard you saying like because there is like this whole thing of what is a war game, right? And
I
I
don't
think
like that question.
and I think it has been influential, but I think to me it's not okay. It's not ridiculous to the people that think it's important. But I mean, come on, really is Twilight Struggle a war game? Yeah, sure it is. So is Risk. So is in my mind, right? Like
Yeah. And
whatever, it's
to the people asking that question, I would ask them, why is it important for you? Do you have do you have a role in actually classifying board games, and you need to know what is a war game because it's a fixed category that is important to you? Or do you? The problem that I have is that most of the time it's a way to exclude, and we're going back to something that you were saying at the beginning. It's like there are the things that I like and things that I don't like, and the things that I don't like, I'm going to say they are not war games. And to be a war game, it needs to have hexes, it needs to have combat factor and everything. And it's like, well, I'm happy that you like competitive Sudoku once again, but it's a bigger world, and our hobby is more innovative than what those people believe.
Words have meaning, right? And when we say things like, because I've heard people say ridiculous things like, well, this is a war game, but we're all inclusive. Well, you're not all inclusive because you're defining what you think a war game is, right? And I think we just need to be inclusive on every level, like in the sense of, sure, okay, I would even draw a line and say, okay, is a train game a war game? No, but but
it has hexes.
Yeah, well, that's true. But the thing is, honestly, in some ways, it's an irrelevant discussion in the
exactly.
sense
That's
of,
my point. I don't think it's
it's just because you know what? Here's what's most important is that everybody enjoys their journey. That's all that matters, and to make it enjoyable, let's include everybody. You know what? I'll play any game you want to play. I don't care what it is. All I ask in return is that now it's my turn to pick a game. That's it.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I'm the guy in my group that will play anything that's a war game, right? Okay, what's a war game? It doesn't matter. My point is I have friends that won't play naval games. I have friends that won't play tactical games. But luckily I have enough people that I know I can get my fix anywhere. But I'm definitely like not the guy to ask is, Mark, is this a good game? Because I'm also the guy that when I get a game, I don't look for what's bad or broken in it. I look for what works in it.
Yeah,
I want to know, like Liz, you're designing a game. If I was to buy it and look at it, I'm going to be like, gee, what was Liz? And I'm sorry, who you said your partner's name?
David Thompson.
David Thompson. What was their vision for this game? That's what I want to figure out. I'm not going to actually sit there and figure out, oh, this is broken. Now, if I come across something like, hey, this is screwed up, I don't go on social media and blow you guys up and be like, hey, here's something I found. It could be an issue. Or, and if we are online, let's have a valid, constructive discussion about it.
And just to manage your expectation, Mark, Liz game is not a game about a metal band called Night Bitches.
I know that. I got it.
I just want to clarify it because you made me extremely disappointed. I would be heartbroken if you ended up the discussion.
No. Where's this game Night Bitches at? No, I get it. No, it's funny because I swear to God, I'm going to find it later and I know there's a band out there called Night Witch, but
actually, so what's really funny is I did quietly Google after we talked about it. There is a metal band called Night Bitch, and there's also
Oh.
another band called Night Witch. So they're both out there. So
That doesn't surprise me. I'm a huge metalhead, honestly.
The beautiful world of metal, everything exists in there. But
Go someday. Like I think you said, how do you say your name? Fred, Frida. How do you say your name?
Just Fred.
Fred.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know at some point you said you lived in England, right? So go someday when you get a minute. Not that you'll like the music necessarily, but go look up a band called Venom. They were literally the first like dark or black metal, and they came out of England back in 1980, I think. But anyways, that being said, I want to throw in, if I can, and like I said, I can keep going, but I know you got limits. But I wanted to say a piece about recruiting new players, and this is through practice. I can tell you this, and I'm convinced of this. It does not matter how complex or how simple a game is. It's a matter of, does the new player have an interest in the subject matter? Period. And I've taught people that never played a war game in their life, GMT World at War, which with 200 pages of rules is pretty complex, and that is an exception. But the guy had a keen interest, wanted to learn it, and he still plays it, as far as I know. I've introduced new gamers, and I say gamers, new war gamers with GMT's Bomber Command, very process-driven game where it's interesting to play the Germans, the British. I like the game, but I got a guy that he's not an avid war gamer, but he does play Paths of Glory and plays some other ones now. And that's how I introduced him to wargaming. And we just need to be inclusive and accepting, whether it's it's like I do a local board game meetup once a month. And we've had, they're not really kids, but, I've had some 20-year-olds drop in, and now they're like casual war gamers. And, and it wasn't that I was able to show them a game with 2 pages of rules. Maybe it was 8 or whatever, but they had an interest in the subject. I'm telling you, I really firmly believe out of all the years I've been organizing and doing recruiting that's number one. Yeah.
I think that's a solid advice, because often people are going to talk about gateway games and they're just going to pick a game that they want to play, and that they are going to force onto a newbie saying, oh, but it's an introductory game, it's fine, you're going to learn this and that.
Yeah.
But you're not at school. Like, if you want to get people, like, what kind of experience are you going to give them? And I think getting them where they are and reaching out and saying, what are you interested in? And just say, well, if you're interested in this, we could play that, and you might enjoy this. And
then I would add, when we're explaining it, it's like I said when I got Tactics 2, we do have to remember it's a totally different language. So what we take for granted, they're going to ask questions. They're not stupid questions, because we're teaching them a whole different language. It'd be like, like I never learned how to speak French. Okay. So, but it's
big
like
mistake,
the same,
Mark. Big mistake.
I know.
Huge.
I took French in high school, but I don't remember, but yeah, you're right. Absolutely, brother. But my point is like, we do got to remember that it's a totally different language, because I've played games. There's literally 2 games in my life that I don't like. One was Avalanche Press did a game called John Prado's Third Reich, and some people love it, so I'm not raining on their parade, but it literally has nothing to do. John Prado's had nothing to do with designing it, and it was a bucket of dice game, which I like. Bucket of dice game, I just didn't like that one. And then another one was actually the Gamers did a game called Crusader for their Standard Combat series, and some people may love it. As far as I'm concerned, it could have been called Space Invaders. I mean, it was so generic and so simple. It has no, and I think the Standard Combat series is pretty genius, because most of them capture a feeling of history. That was the exception.
No, I was just really enjoying this advice, because it made me think about, like, I don't know, it's almost like learning how to give a good gift, if that makes sense. Like getting somebody to play and enjoy a game. When you give a gift to someone, you have to think about not what you would want, but what they would want. And maybe the very best gifts are gifts that the other person would like, and it's also it's so good that you would also want it yourself. And maybe like introducing people to games is that way. Like it's like giving somebody else the right present, and give them the gift that you want to open. You give them the gift that they're going to enjoy.
And it's also about being persistent, right? And because like when I say that, like there is a local store, it's a comic store here in town. But they do sell some war games and they sell Euro games and miniatures and all that. But I literally just used to show up at their board game nights and I'd end up playing stuff like Munchkin and whatever the flavor of the week was.
I hate Munchkin.
You were a patient man.
With
I
every
liked
fibers of my body. Like I hate it so much.
See, hate's a strong word, but okay, I can live with that. But the thing is, I'd always bring a stack of war games, and I was consistent, and eventually, that's how I introduced 2 or 3 people that way. They're like, "Oh, what's this game? This looks interesting. Well, here, let me show you."
Also, the casual approach of just living it out here. It's like, oh, I didn't notice I just brought a pile of war games.
Right?
Are you interested?
But it's kind of like, really quick. I'll just say this is. It's kind of like I love it when people say, I don't have a local store to play at, and they complain and they complain. And I'm like, okay, so how many games did you go buy from them? Because guess what? They're a business and they need to stay in business. And they let you play. But, I pre-order and buy on the internet, but I also buy at my local store. Sure, I play a premium price. But if I expect to be able to go have a place to play once a month, in a place that's going to actually carry some stuff on the shelves. Because I will say this, we didn't get to talk much about it, but back in the old days, you had toy stores, you had war games that were actually at like my local drugstore, or like here in the United States, Toys R Us even carried them for a while, which was, used to be a big toy retailer, right? You don't have that anymore. Most people find wargaming now through the internet.
Yeah.
They don't, it's not like, but when I was a kid, you could walk in almost any store that, department, whatever. And even department stores would have a little section with some war games in it.
I think we might come back. I think there are some games that are coming. I think Undaunted is a series that worked really well going back in bookstores. In the UK, you would find them at Waterstone and everything. So I don't know. I feel like there is a possibility to come back. I think there are some publishers that are figuring out that they need to be more visible outside of just very niche shops, and actually some games might be interesting to the general public. So I feel like we're on the verge of maybe coming back. We'll see. But maybe just to conclude, I wanted to ask you, Mark, what would be the words that you would like to tell to the new generation of historical gamers, things that you would like them to keep in mind as they potentially enter the hobby and maybe watch this video?
I guess what I would like to say to the younger gamers is this, and I know it's a little generic, but enjoy your journey, whatever it is. Like, get that game, experience it, love it, participate in the hobby. What I mean by that is, whether you're online or recruit, and just have fun with it. Don't let negative people tarnish that. Like, just embrace, whatever it is you're enjoying. And if you got questions, ask, because there's more experienced gamers out there that will include you, that will celebrate you becoming part of the fold in the community. And just really, it really is just enjoy your journey, because it's really short, and make time for your hobby, whether it's 30 minutes a week, whatever it is. I've never dropped out of gaming ever, no matter what was going on in my life. Now, granted, it might have been I was doing 2 hours a month, but make time. And number one,
you kept the number one for last. You're getting it. Yeah.
I am. So number one, and I'm going to just say this because I've seen it happen, is when you get into a relationship with your partner, like whatever, boyfriend, girl, like whatever, make sure you're open about your gaming and what place that has in your life. Because I've seen it where people get together and one half of the equation or whatever, and they disappear. They get together with somebody and they just disappear. And I have literally seen it 99% of the time. where I'm not saying that's the only reason that it ended a relationship, but it was a part of it. It was a symptom. You know, my partner, my wife, we've been together 40 years, married 36. She's not a gamer, but she puts up with it. And I've been straight from day one. This is what gaming means to me. And yes, dear, I love you more, but don't ever ask me to burn my games because I won't. So,
I think this speaks to both Liz and I. I think we have the same kind of relationship with our own partners.
yeah,
Like being very
Yeah.
transparent. It is important for us, but
I'm very sincere about that because I've literally just seen it so many times over the years. You know, people joke about it and they make light of it. But I'm telling you, man, I've seen guys that, you know, girls too, you know, in wargaming, let's be honest, there's not as many women or, you know, in it as men, but
Working on that.
yeah.
well, but they are out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, just literally disappeared because whatever one partner or the other thought, you know, and you know, and I guess that gets in a lot of other areas more of a symptom than anything. But that's it. I guess that was it. See,
That's
because
very
I'm our
cute.
local communist, I guess.